37th parallel on America's haunted highway, it's Pixelated Paranormal, your guide to the unusual and the strange.
Welcome back, everybody, to another wonderful episode of Pixelated Paranormal. For those of you keeping track, it should be Season 2, Episode 7, but that might not matter anymore. Today's episode, we're going to have a lot of different stuff coming at you from all different directions. We've got a World War II sub being attacked by sea monsters. We've got UFO experts being offed by the government, potentially. And the strange case of the Sherman Ranch, also known as the Skinwalker Ranch. But without further ado, let me introduce my main two squeezes, Preston and Rob. Preston, how's it going?
Life is good. Recently got the lady moved in this week, so everything's going good with that. And then working on getting my second degree with the brothers. So
look, no one wants to hear about you getting laid. All right, having a woman living with you. No one wants to hear that shit. Some of us here are very lonely.
But do tell us more about the masonry. You're a mason.
I am a mason. Just got my second degree, and then next week, right after we do our next D&D cast, I will be a master mason and have my third degree.
Ooh, sick burn.
Rob, how are you, man? How you been doing?
No, I've been doing all right. Just doing my thing.
Hell yeah, that's what I like to hear. Well, I've got a quick announcement. We've been talking about making improvements to our show, and so we want to announce that we're going to change the release date on our episodes from, when do these come out, Tuesdays?
Yeah. Have you talked to Mark about this yet?
I have, yeah. Yeah, he's good with it.
Okay, cool.
Yep. So we've talked about changing the show release date from Tuesdays to Thursdays, and we're going to tell you why. Typically, we record these babies on a Thursday night around midnight, and we've discovered that the energy level is really hyped throughout the day, and as soon as the witching hour comes around, we are like a bunch of brain-dead turnips.
Or Rob
so
just wants to go play video games.
Dear God.
So we're going to start recording earlier. We're going to start recording earlier. We're going to record shows on Monday nights, probably around 10 p.m., so we're going to be a little more awake and a little more
Yeah, and we're going to do it live, too. You're going to
then,
go watch it on Twitch?
Yeah.
Are we
I
doing
just
that?
fucking made that up.
Oh, I brought that up.
Oh, did you actually bring that up?
Yeah.
Hey, we could try it, but I don't know if anybody would watch it.
Who knows, guys? It's always...
It's just another avenue, baby.
That's
It's
right.
just another avenue.
And it's always evolving here at PPP.
We could always do it like once a month or something, not do it every week.
I mean, we know we got one person who's going to watch it, Josh, because he's the only other person that watches, anything we Twitch stream. So,
so yeah, who knows, man? Maybe we can talk about that more, or that could be the end of the discussion, and we just do it either way.
I was just making shit up. See what happens. Don't make shit up.
I like that. But anyway, guys, so yeah, we're gonna start.
Big shit becomes real.
Yeah, you can see it raw and unedited in all its NC-17 glory. We record on Monday nights now, starting next, basically 2 weeks from now. So 2 weeks from now, you will get a new episode on Thursday, not Tuesday, but we'll make sure it's a special one for you. Also, we got a Halloween show coming up, and I talked with Mark. We'll be dropping that Halloween episode on Halloween. So look for a Halloween special on All Hallows Eve. So, and then a bit more quick news. This is a surprise for Preston. And Preston, we can't talk about where this is, but I've got official permission that we can go to undisclosed location and do an actual ghost hunt.
Hell's fucking yeah. Is that what we're doing for the Halloween show, or is this going to be like post-Halloween?
It'll probably have to be after that. I don't think we can get in there that soon.
Right on.
But we do have permission from the owner, as long as we do not officially say where it was, because it is a business that is active and very popular in Wichita.
Do I know where this place is at? Because I think I've...
You probably do, and if not, I can tell you off the air.
Okay. Is it some place that you guys have tried to get in to do this before, and you did? Okay, I know what you're talking about now.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So, yeah, we might get an actual ghost investigation recorded and put on for the show as well, so that'll be pretty exciting stuff. But I guess right now, guys, we should probably just jump on in to the news. What do you think?
Let's do it to it.
Anybody else have any special announcements? It's like grade school. All right, guys, today for the announcements. We're having Cook's Choice on a bun.
Hot dog stuff in his butt.
And hot dog stuff with Preston and his brother. Up first on the news, what I've got is apparently in Bermuda. Where the hell's Bermuda?
By the triangle.
In the triangle.
Okay. Next to the triangle in Bermuda, a couple fishermen found a 14-pound lobster with claws ranging in about 2 feet long. And they say it's a...
That's pretty long.
It's pretty
Red
big.
Lobster should jump in on that. They'd be set for life.
Yeah, I don't know. There's actually a shortage from what I understand in lobster. Like it's...
Apparently, because this one's eating it all.
Yeah, it says that the two fishermen in Bermuda were out fishing for snappers the day of the hurricane when Hurricane Nicole struck, and they hooked a massive lobster instead. They said that they posted pictures on Facebook and actually kind of, picked it up and held it and were kind of blown away by how huge it was. And they thought as soon as they found it, the best thing they should do is probably send it back instead of, keeping it and eating it. And they said it was kind of an anomaly. And they were so impressed by how big it was, they decided to put it back in the water. And what I think is kind of cool is kind of a Free Willy moment.
Yeah, that's what my last girlfriend said, too.
When they put it back in the water, it was so exhausted just from the sheer shock of being basically, taken out of its home by bipedal gods and probably swung around the boat. It was too tired to swim, so one of the fishermen actually jumped back in the water with the lobster and kind of treaded water and swam around with it until it regained enough strength to disappear back into the depth where it came from.
Aww.
But they said it's not too unusual to find big lobsters like that. I think in 2012 in Maine, they caught a 27-pounder. So that kind of just blows my, excuse the pun, but that just blows my news story right out of the water. A diver in San Diego found a 12-pound lobster in 2006, and a Canadian crew drug out a 20-pounder in 2008.
But they were very sorry for it.
Yeah, they were very sorry for it. The big lobsters simply mean that those have been swimming a very long time in very deep water. It's pretty well, I think, decided that lobsters I don't know if they can live forever, but the bigger they are, the longer they live, and they don't really have any point where they stop growing. So basically, that 27-pounder, who knows how big that or how old that thing was. But for our geography friends here and our gun aficionados alike, there is a set of pistols being sold for $1 million, and they are actually carved out from a meteorite. Did you guys hear about that? That was announced back in 2015, I think on Christmas Eve, actually. So we're a little late to the party, but a buddy of mine showed me this in passing. It says that a rare gun collector should start saving up because luxury handgun maker Cabot Guns has just announced their extraterrestrial pistols, which will be forged from the Gibeon meteorite. How much is that price tag, you're asking, Rob? It's a cool $1 million.
Why would I ask? You just told me a while ago it was $1 million gun.
Because you weren't paying attention. It says Cabot has been called Rolls-Royce of guns, and the company's clients include celebrities like Kid Rock and Joe Mantegna.
John Mantegna. Oh, he's an actor.
Joey Montana?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Thank you, he's in Baby's Day Out.
Cabot founder and...
Actually, he's on one of them CSI shows or something.
Yes.
I hope it's Baby's Day Out, because I love that freaking movie. Cabot founder and president Bob Beyonce.
We just call him Beyonce.
Bob Beyonce told CNN Money, "It hasn't been done before, and that's kind of the thing that drives me. I think it's fair to state that many of the pistols that we have constructed are borderline art. They're calling this set of pistols the Big Bang pistol. I think that's kind of cool. It's being crafted from a 35-kilogram piece of the Gibeon meteorite, which was found in Namibia in the 1830s. The Gibeon meteor crashed to Earth in approximately... What are you laughing at? How do you pronounce that?
No, I'm laughing because he wasn't Baby's Day Out. And the sad thing is, I looked him up, and it's got Criminal Minds. That's the show he's on, not CSI. The Godfather Part 3. You're like, oh, okay, pretty respectable too. Third movie on the list, Baby's Day Out.
All three incredible pieces of cinematography.
Anyway, sorry.
So the Big Bang gun set will be 2 semi-automatic 45 caliber pistols made from the 1911 style of gun, which is the standard issue in many U.S. Army gun, which is standard issue for the U.S. Army gun for nearly 90 years. And again, back to the Gibeon meteor. It crashed to Earth in approximately 4.5 billion years ago.
Wow.
And he says, Bianchin compares working with a meteorite to a science experiment, saying that he feels like they're finally on their way to constructing functional left and right-handed pistols. The pistols are expected to be sold at auction, so pretty freaking cool. And you guys can Google pictures of it. Just look for meteor gun. It's pretty slick looking. I'm not going to say like it's not anything science fiction-y like I hoped it would be, like, plasma rifles, but hey, I'll take what I can get.
I'm completely disappointed right now.
Why is that?
Like, I wanted like a fucking death ray gun. Like, you're talking like meteor gun, and like I thought the shit was gonna happen.
He thought he was gonna have a gun shooting meteors.
Fucking some.
Preston's cashing in his stock
yes,
right now.
and it's all it is some fucking stupid, like 45 pistol. Man, they do everything with meteors. Like, they even have that Russian vodka that's in the alien head that's like filtered through meteorites.
Yeah, that's true. I've heard it tastes like Bigfoot's ass.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's vodka for you.
Vodka.
So, Preston, what do you got? What do you got for me news-wise?
Vodka. No, I was perusing Facebook earlier this week. I didn't get the full details of the article, but what I did read, it caught my eye, that a scientist from Switzerland was running experiments on people who had reported like shadow people encounters or like sleep paralysis, and he was studying those areas of the brains that were the most active, and then being able to reproduce those chemical responsive or those neurological receptors in the lab. And so when he was redoing the actual experiments in lab on, various test subjects, the people who were being experimented on couldn't go through all the way with the experiment because the sensory overload that they were experiencing made them feel like there were multiple people or like just an intense amount of fear going on in the room while he was doing the experiments. And so it was dubbed that the man recreated Ghost in the lab. So if you look it up on Facebook or look it up on the internet, it'll be something titled about Swiss scientist creates Ghost in lab. And it was just the fact that he was able to reproduce those chemical imbalances in the brain so that he could further study schizophrenia. But what he was able to do was so overwhelming that they thought that like fucking Poltergeist and like The Exorcist was in that goddamn room.
Wow,
that's pretty awesome.
Kerrigan.
So we were talking about that, and I wanted to bring up my story. Is this week on Monday I picked up the PlayStation Virtual Reality headset, PlayStation VR. And you talk about how your brain can sense things like you said, he created ghosts basically in his head because of the certain neurological pathways and introducing those. Well, the brain is it is weird how the brain works when it thinks it's in certain environments. So I picked this thing up, and I have never messed with the virtual reality headset. I've never been anywhere where they've been available to use. I know the Oculus and the Vive and the cardboard thing or whatever. Those are all available, but I haven't really thought much about it, and Mom was asking me, what I wanted for Christmas, and I said if I find one, I'll probably pick it up. And I didn't expect to find one, the first week it was out, because apparently they were supposed to be all sold out everywhere before they released. And I would tell you, I put this thing on, and I was just blown away because, I felt like I was in a 3D environment. There's just something about the head tracking and stuff when you're looking around. Your brain perceives it as real. Even though it looks cartoony or whatever, your brain really does perceive shit like that as you're in this environment. There's a couple of games that really made me feel this way. The first one I played was something called Job Simulator. And basically I was it's a real cartoony world, and it's basically set in the year 2050, and it's set in a museum where robots are showing you how humans used to live their life at their jobs. So the one I picked was convenience store clerk, and you're sitting behind this counter, and you look around you in 300. You can look around. You're in a little box basically, but you look around you in 360 degrees. You see the cabinets, and you see like posters behind you. You see like stuff on the shelves, and they come in with different scenarios. Like this one guy comes in and robs the store, and you got to open the safe by using your hand and the controller in your hand to reach out and and turn a knob and stuff like that to get the safe open. And he says, "Give me all your cheddar." Of course, when you open the safe up, it's full of cheddar instead of money. It's goofy shit like that. But your brain, when you're sitting there, you're looking at all this shit, and you're watching these people moving around, and you're seeing cars drive by, and you're like, "Oh my God, it feels realistic." But I'll tell you this, the game that really nailed it home, I picked up last night, was the Batman Arkham VR. And,
right.
Okay, it starts out in Wayne Manor. Actually, the game starts out with you seeing your parents get killed. And you're the little boy. I mean, you look like a little kid because you're about half of your parents' size or whatever. And so they show that, and then they go to the Wayne Manor, and it's like your brain is just like the fact that I could just everywhere you look, you're seeing something, and you're not controlling this with your hands. I mean, you're just moving your head, and you're like, and I was able to turn 360 degrees, or not 360 degrees, 180 degrees around to look behind me and just see like the staircase and stuff, and it was like my body felt like I was really in this room. So, but they tell you that...
Did you feel like you were Bruce Wayne?
Dude, when you put on the bat suit and shit, that's awesome. Because it literally goes, okay...
I am Batman!
It literally goes up your thighs and hugs your buttocks. You stand
in front of the bat suit and you reach out and you grab the bat symbol and put it on your chest. And when you put it on your chest, you're wearing the suit, and it's like, okay, now here's your grapple gun. So you take the grapple gun, and he has you fire it, and he's like, okay, now put it up. And you're like, well, put it up. And you look down and to the right on your thigh, right where your thighs would be, there's a gun holster, and you place the holster, you place a grapple gun there, and it sticks to your thigh. And every time you want to use it, you just reach down and pick it up and grab it and shoot it. But and when you want a batarang, you reach in the front, like front of your belt, and you just throw it like you would throw a bat. But what really...
Now, is this thing picking up on your hand movements too? So
if
you're not having to use like an actual controller or
anything?
You can
use a controller, but I've got the 2 move controllers, and that's the best way to use it. So basically, you got think of like 2 Wii remotes.
Oh, cool, yeah.
And and basically that's what it is. You're holding these 2 things in your hand, but the camera sees those as your hand. So when you actually reach out, you put your hand over something. If you hit that trigger in the back of it, your hand grips it. So that's how you're picking shit up. I mean, there's like literally the first thing you get to do in the Batcave is there's all these blood vials, and you like take them and put them in a centrifuge, hit the button on that, and it'll spin them around and put them over this other thing, and it tells you they're infected with the Joker virus. And I was like, this is so fucking cool. But before you even get down there, Alfred's sitting there in front of this piano. You're sitting in front of this piano. He's like, here, sir, I'll meet you in the basement. We've got important work to do. And he hands you a key, and you take the key out of his hand, and you put it in front of this piano and turn it. I mean, you got to turn your wrist, and you got to actually lift up the lid of the piano and hit the keys. And after you do all that, all of a sudden, the fucking floor starts coming down. Like you're starting to go down an elevator. And dude, as you're descending into the Batcave, my whole body felt tense. Like I was getting dropped down. I mean, I felt like the floor was really moving out from underneath me. That's how my brain perceived it, because that's what my brain was seeing. And I was kind of wobbly at first. And so this morning I got Mom in here, and I said, Mom, you got to see this. And sure enough, I got her to that point, and she's like, Rob, I need you to stand behind me, because she's going to fall over, because she was starting to cause her to wobble. But I mean, it literally gave me fear at some points, because there's one point you're on top of a building, like high above the city, and when you're talking to this villain you've captured, you can walk to the edge of the building and look down over the city, and you see the cars moving on below and everything. I was like, it made me nervous, because I felt like if I stepped too far, I would fall off. Even though I knew it wasn't real, my brain was really perceiving this as something neat. It was awesome. It's so awesome.
So what you're saying right now, Rob, if I'm not mistaken, is your mom's Batman.
Yeah, my mom is Batman.
I've never seen your mom and Batman in the same room before.
Well, she put the suit on and everything. Granted, I had to walk her through it. I was more like Alfred. Okay, Mom. I need you to put the grapple gun on your waist. How do I do that, Mom? Just put it on your waist. I see it now. No, Mom, you still have it in your hand. I can still see it. Oh, okay.
Your mom is one of my favorite people in the entire world, man. She's the best. I watched the video of her playing that Resident Evil game when she was sitting there in the chair playing that Resident Evil game, and she's sitting there talking trash to that one ghost. She's like, "Come over here, I'll knock you out." And then the one fucking drops down from the top, and she's like, "Ah!" She's the best. She's the coolest.
But I'm telling you, I can believe all this stuff about what the brain can make you see, because just playing the virtual reality, I'm amazed that this is generation 1 of this stuff. I mean, how is this stuff going to look in 10 years if they keep going with that?
In the end of the article, the scientist has said that he linked all these sensations that he was reproducing in the lab with these patients to the brain becoming self-aware, so that like he's inducing a new self-awareness, and that's why these patients were feeling like somebody else was in the room, or they felt the presence of ghosts, because the brain was becoming actually self-aware for the first time of the body in a new sense. And
oh, wow.
So I don't know, it was interesting, so check it out.
So it's pretty much Lawnmower Man.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, Rob, what do you got for news, man? News me real good.
And don't like fucking give us a story of a meteorite gun and then it's just like a story of 2 fucking like 45 pistols.
So I came across this real interesting story the other day when I was like looking for news. So they were laying some cable across the trench, I guess. I don't know what in the ocean. I don't remember where it was at. It was somewhere near, it was Wigtonshire.
Good old Wigtonshire.
And, so they're laying this cable, and they found this old sub, and they believe it's I want to say it's UB-86. Now, this was a German sub that back in World War I, 1918, it was on the surface, and the U.S. military... the British military, the British military came upon it, and they were able to take control of it, and they were shocked because the people on the boat let them, the Germans, there was a German sub, and they're like, they let them on the boat to take him prisoner or whatever, and basically after that, they destroyed the sub and let it sink, and they said, well, why were you guys on the surface? He goes, well, we couldn't descend it, and he asked the German captain, well, why? And the German commander said, well, we were trying to recharge our batteries on the surface, and as we were doing so in the middle of the night, all of a sudden this large creature came out of the water with glistening teeth and horns found on its faces. It only had one face. And it had
2 faces.
And he said it was a giant creature, and it attacked the sub, damaged it enough where they couldn't descend in the water again. And it basically grabbed a hold of the gun on the front of the sub, and they kept firing at this damn thing. And he told all the people to come up to the top and just keep firing at this thing. And eventually, the sea monster that was attacking them stopped and descended down, and they never seen it again. And they couldn't go anywhere. They were stuck out here because there was enough damage done. They couldn't descend. They couldn't go anywhere. And so when the military had sunk it before they even got a chance to really look at it. But now they think that this might be this boat that supposedly had the sea monster attack, and they said they won't know for sure until they get down there and find like a plaque or something on there that has the number on it, the UB-86 or whatever. He said they said it also could be its sister sub as well, but we might. They might be able to find out if that's a true story or if it's just. Oh, that's not really a monster. That looks like it got hit by a torpedo or something. But it's still an interesting story to see. A sea monster attacking a sub in 1919, and apparently this area has had lots of sea monster stories and stuff in the past. So it's not
and around, you said England somewhere?
Yeah, England.
So, like Scotland, is like the upper part of.
They said that's what it was. It looked like a Lake Ness monster type of creature.
Yeah, Nessie.
So,
is anybody else kind of bored of Nessie? Like, I'm at the point now where I can really give a shit less. If they catch a Loch Ness monster, that's great, and if not, that's cool.
I mean, it's like Bigfoot. You hear so many stories about it that it's gotten so cliche at this point that there's nothing ever new. It's like, oh, I seen this thing walking through the woods, or oh, I seen this head poke out of the water.
Right. I think I'd be more excited about Bigfoot than I would be about Loch Ness. Like, I think I'd rather see a jackalope.
I think I'd rather be more excited about Mbele.
I don't even know what that is.
That's the African.
Nobody knows what
that's
that
the
is.
African Loch Ness, the one that lives in the jungle. That's like an actual Brachiosaurus or Brontosaurus or whatever it is.
But that's what it's called.
Mbele.
But did they click their tongue too? Because I'm going to fact check you on that.
Yeah, they click their tongue.
And then they make a movie, Baby, about that.
baby
The last
dinosaurs.
dinosaur.
Oh, it's called Land Before Time.
Yeah.
1 through 43.
So,
God, the show that should just stop. The series that should just stop.
what show was that? I'm sorry.
Land Before Time.
Oh, I thought it was already dead. Kind of like the little girl that played Ducky. Yep. Whoa, God, that
Wait,
got
she's
dark
dead?
fast.
She died?
Yeah, she died. Her parents were jerks. So,
No more ducky.
so she died like I think before.
He flied? Nope.
I think she died before the second movie came out or something. I don't remember. So the
jeez.
other story I had that Steven pointed us to, I mean, I'd actually seen the story before, but I hadn't looked into it much. But Steven kind of was like, hey, you guys need to take a look at the story. And I was like, I read into it. And God, did I ever go down a fucking rabbit hole on this one. So
Let's take a minute to thank our Beach Street
the man on the
reporter,
street.
Steven. The man on the street.
He gives us the clown
That's
updates.
it,
He
folks.
gives us the rabbit holes. Oh, Steven.
Yeah. He's the official fourth leg of the podcast. The Beach Street reporter.
Kids on the street, Beat Street, whatever.
Oh God, fucking wonder shows. Anyway, go ahead.
So apparently, this man named Max Spears. I started looking into his history because I'm like, he's apparently a big UFO nut. And his mom got a text message, basically saying a few days before he died from him saying, "Your boy's in trouble. If I die, please investigate." Now, I thought that was a little weird myself because your boy's in trouble. That seems like somebody else wrote that message. You know,
Yeah.
you don't ever hear. You know, if I would never text my mom, "Hey, mom, your boy's in trouble. If I die, please investigate."
Yeah, right.
It just seems like odd, and it's just one of the. It's just I don't know. It just seems weird, but anyway, the story going around is that when they found him dead, he had been vomiting up some black goo, like a black oil almost, kind of like the X-Files movie.
Like X-Files.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's that seems kind of weird. He was found dead on the couch by some people he was staying at. He was apparently staying with a woman that he didn't know, which is also weird. But he also has a fiancée. So I don't know if he was just staying there because it was convenient. He was I think he was at some kind of conference or something that weekend. So maybe that's why he was staying at this place. So that was kind of odd. Well, then, like 2 days later, his fiancée comes back out to say, "Hey, he was talking to me before he died about a cabal of black magic magicians. One of them is a senator, or like a military brass or something. And apparently they're into black magic and such. So they think that may be what killed him. And if you think of black magic and coughing up black blood or whatever the hell he coughed up, that seems kind of mysterious because your black magic. You always see that in movies, the black voodoo and stuff that's coming out of the person's body. And I even looked up what could be black goo coming out of somebody's body, and they said a lot of poisons could destroy the internal stomach and stuff like that, and that could bubble up through your throat.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, it's just really odd. But she seems like he was worried about this, and he wanted her to let people know. So anyway, like I said, I started delving into this guy a little bit more, and apparently he claims to have been a super soldier at one time. He was kidnapped, or not really kidnapped, but he was part of a super soldier program. He was a survivor of it, and I couldn't find too much information about that, just ramblings. And right before the show started, I wanted to look just a little bit more into him because I had a few minutes before Sean got on. And I found the last interview he did, and it was so weird, dude. The dude, I don't know, he sounds crazy. Honestly, after reading all this stuff and thinking, wow, this is very interesting. When you hear the guy speak, he doesn't seem like he's firing on all cylinders there. And also, what was really weird, the interview took place 3 days before he died, and he was talking about a a general named Aquino, and he said that he came up with that name himself because it starts with Alpha and ends with Omega, and it's Queen in the middle. And he started talking about him and this guy have been having issues on the material or on the other plane. They've met each other on the other planes before, and they've had basically stare downs and stuff on the other planes of existence. And he said that he wouldn't be surprised if it eventually moved to the material plane, that they would have to come for each other at some point. So the dude was fucking weird, man. And he apparently said this guy was he almost sounded like he was talking about him being a reptilian. Now, it was a 90-minute, it was like a 76-minute interview with this guy, so I only got to listen. I was like kind of busting through to see if I get some good shit out of it. But he did have pictures in the video, and the guy does look pretty weird. He just doesn't look like a normal person. He almost looks like a 50s, old vampire, or that guy from the Munsters, the one that was the vampire or whatever.
Right.
Grandpa, I think is what who he was.
Grandpa like, Munster.
Yeah, Grandpa Munster kind of look, and that's what this dude kind of looks like. Not Max Spears, but the Aquino. I don't, but. He's a weird looking. It's a weird looking dude, but I don't know. This dude seemed like he was high as a kite or crazy or something when he was doing the interview. And I didn't actually watch another interview with him to see if he always sounded like that, or if maybe he was actually sick. To me, he sounded like somebody that was ill already. So I mean, it's possible he'd been, like he said, he'd been poisoned or something like that, or maybe they were putting the voodoo curses on him or whatever. But to me, he just sounded like he was crazy. I hate to say that because I believe in a lot of this other dimensional stuff and stuff like that, but I don't know, sometimes when people come right out and they start adding, it's like when they start taking everything that's out there in that world and putting it all together, like, yeah, the reptilians and I'm on the 5th dimension and they're trying to kill me with black magic, all that starts to sound like, okay, you're fucking taking a story with us here, because there's just too much.
Your dick's in the peanut butter because you're fucking nuts.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Speaking of which, reptilians, I haven't looked it up yet, but supposedly there's floating on YouTube somewhere a video recently of the Queen waving. She's like, hello, crowd, hello, people. And she's doing her little Queen wave, like, hello. And then, like, on camera, you see her hand, like, get all reptilian-like, and then it's like, whoosh, back to human hand. And that, my friends, right there is proof that the Queen is a reptilian. She's
or it's artifacting. Either one.
Yeah, or there's no fucking video whatsoever, but I just was just trying to make a connection with you, Rob.
Don't make a connection with me, bro.
Missed connections. I was on your show talking about the Queen being a reptile.
You were talking about the strange Max Spears.
You had that look on your face. You're the son of the famous Batwoman.
Don't give out her secret identity.
Lost and looking for my Alfred. Well, that sounds crazy, man, about that guy. It is weird if he was, an up-and-coming, blooming conspiracy theorist, that all of a sudden he's gone. And the fact that he...
Well, at first I thought he was that guy that they were talking about at Contact in the Desert that was supposedly the super soldier. But they talked about that guy being fat and out of shape, and he's like, yeah, this guy's not a super soldier or nothing. And that's who I was at first. But this guy's a trim, skinny guy. He does look like he could probably have, he looks like he's a tougher hombre than the guy.
Sounds like you want to date him, Rob.
And plus, not only that, I looked up Contact in the Desert and Max Spears, and he wasn't there, so...
The name is familiar, but I think that story is more familiar, just that kind of thing happening over and over and over to people, not just this.
Oh, and also the big thing, too, is apparently his mom said that they didn't do an autopsy on it, and they said he died of natural causes. I don't know how many natural causes could make black goo erupt from your esophagus. I mean, I'm no a doctor expert here, but that doesn't seem very natural. I mean, I guess if you drink arsenic, maybe that is natural or something. Also, she said that
maybe it was soy sauce.
They said, from what I understood too, is his mom had him shipped back home, and they were doing an autopsy there. But now the people that were doing the autopsy refused to give her the results. But then again, this only happened like 4 or 5 days ago. I mean, I can't imagine they did an autopsy that quick, and it usually takes them a while to give you that information. So this could all be a hodgepodge of bullshit too. Will they pick up the story next week when she gets the results and find out? Oh yeah, he apparently had lung cancer or something and didn't know.
Well, what I saw was that she said that all she received was a Polish death certificate.
Yeah, and it said natural causes on it is what it said, but they didn't do an autopsy.
Gotcha. Oh, so weird, man. So bizarre. Well, speaking of UFOs and the bizarre, is that all you got, Robert? I don't want to cut you off if you got more.
Yeah, that's all I got. McShawnald.
Cool.
Call me Robert.
Robot. So, speaking of the weird and the strange and UFOs, I've been recently reading a lot about the Skinwalker Ranch, and the three of us have talked about that and heard a lot about it on a podcast and whatnot. But for listeners who haven't heard about it, definitely look this up after tonight, after this episode, and see what kind of stories you can find. There's lots of books. Unfortunately, we decided that we were going to talk about it, and then you do a lot of research online, and all you get is a bunch of teasing, and then in the end, it's people saying, if you want to hear the real story, buy my book. And people like Ryan Skinner have, 7 to 8 different books about this, so we can maybe talk about him more later. But Skinwalker Ranch is located in Salt Lake City. Not Salt Lake City, by Salt Lake City, Utah. It's also known as the Sherman Ranch, and they say it's about 480 acres of land in the southeast area of Ballard, Utah. And it's allegedly the site of, lots of paranormal activity, UFOs, Bigfoots, and other things. They call it Skinwalker Ranch because it's taken from the native legends of skinwalkers from Native Americans, which basically are kind of like shapeshifters or werewolves.
And they're very feared in the Native American community. They say that if you should never even talk about them. If you happen to see one, that you usually would end up dead, I think. Or if you mention that you've seen one, they would kill you. So sometimes there's legends of people walking somewhere through the woods and hear one come up behind them and following them, and then they would say, they'd be like their grandkid or something. The grandkid would be like, "What's that? Shh! Don't talk about it. Just keep walking and don't stop." So
it's kind of like their version of the boogeyman almost. It says that, like you were just saying, the Ute Indians take the legend very seriously. They think that skinwalkers are powerful spirits that have been put here because of a curse that was applied to them generations ago by the Navajo Indians. The center of the entire legend takes place on this ranch, supposedly. The Utes say the ranch is the path of the Skinwalker tribe. Path of the Skinwalker. Tribes say they are strictly forbidden from setting foot on the property. It's also a way that's been like that for a long time. So like I said before, the ranch is about 480 acres of rich, well-watered pastures, a few thick patches of cottonwood, so there's some wooded area, and it's divided into, I think, 3 sections, each being a former homestead. So thick brush and a small river are on one side, a rocky, picturesque ridge on the other side. Skinwalker Ridge is what the Utes call it, according to Hicks. Hicks is one of the people that knows a lot about it. He's one of the historians. A long road is the only way to get in or out of the ranch. So the focus of a lot of the activity really comes to light around 1994. There was a family called the Gormans who bought the farm back around 94 or 95. It was Mr. Gorman, his wife, and 2 kids. And when they first approached the house, they found it to be very strange that there were deadbolts on the outside and inside of the doors and the windows on the main house. They said that there were deadbolts inside, even on some of the kitchen cabinets, and also at both ends of the doors out in the yard, there were heavy iron stakes and heavy chains installed. They guessed that maybe they must have had dogs posted at the front of each door for whatever reason. So the first thing that the Gorman family encountered when they first moved in was that what they refer to as a bulletproof wolf, which is kind of a reoccurring theme throughout the many reports. So it says that they were moving their furniture into the property from the trucks, and they had noticed, kind of on the edge of the yard, a wolf, a rather large wolf. And they said the wolf was watching them for a while, and again, keep in mind, this is a quadruped, so this wolf is on all 4s. The wolf was watching them, slowly getting closer and closer to the yard. They finally decided they should take action when it got a little bit too close for comfort, when it all of a sudden changed its demeanor and just trotted up to them like a friendly dog. So they were petting it and, just talking to it and everything, and they said that it smelled like it had been raining outside and the dog smelled pretty wet. They said after a few minutes of petting it and just kind of playing with it, the wolf casually trotted over to the corral and then grabbed one of the baby calves by the snout and tried to pull the cow through the corral bars. Mr. Gorman said that he began beating the wolf's back with sticks, but it wouldn't release the calf. He finally grabbed his .357 from his truck and shot the wolf point blank, but the slug had no effect. He pumped a second bullet into the wolf, which then let go of the calf, but stood there looking at the family like nothing had happened, like he was confused, like, oh, what the hell was that? He shot it 2 more times with the gun, and the animal just kind of looked over at him, backed off a little bit, didn't show any signs of distress or any blood, and then he went and grabbed a hunting rifle and shot the wolf again, once more at close range. He said that he's pretty experienced marksman, and that it seemed like the wolf really didn't even feel it. After 5 bullets had gone to the wolf, the 6th shot scared it away. But not really scared it away, they said. Instead of being, scared, it just kind of trotted off into the muddy thicket and just disappeared under the horizon.
And this is why we use silver bullets.
Right. And it said they tried to track the wolf for about a mile following the paw prints, but they never could find out where it finally went. They said it's like it just vanished into thin air. They came back and found a chunk of flesh laying near the corral that looked like it was wolf flesh, but it smelled like it was rotten and dead meat that had been laying in the sun for a while. They asked a bunch of neighbors. None of the neighbors could really figure out what it was, but there were reports of dog-like creatures in the area. It said a few weeks later, Mrs. Gorman encountered the same wolf, so she thought, because it was so large. And back in the parallel behind this dog was another dog-like animal, but she couldn't identify quite what it was. They said over the next couple of years, several different weird animals showed up, mostly dogs, some of them being heavily muscled, some of them they guessed were around 200 pounds with curly hair and bushy tails. Just kind of paraded around.
Hello, I just had a perb.
They said once they had a friend over to the property who was hanging out one day, and he had gone out into the yard to do some meditating. And they said that...
I'm sorry, I just that sounds like so pretentious. I don't know why I laughed.
I had a friend over and we meditated in the front yard.
While he was meditating, he said he saw a large blurry form moving through the trees.
It was Bigfoot.
The visitor had been meditating when the thing showed up. It swiftly moved from tree to tree across the pasture, covering what he said hundreds of yards in mere seconds. And when it finally reached the man, it let out a furious roar, something like a bear or a large game animal. It was no bear, according to the man. And it said the Gormans saw it, but said it was almost like invisible, almost like the Predator. So it kind of had that weird anamorphic blob look to it that you could see through it, but still make out some of the outside edge. They also said that through the years of staying there, they noticed a lot of exotic multicolored birds that were not native to the area or the region, and there were numerous close encounters with dark, 9-foot-tall beasts that resemble Bigfoots and Sasquatches.
Told you it was Bigfoot. He's worried. That's why we never get a good picture.
What if he was in a constant state of just like fuzzy pictures?
Yeah, wonder if Bigfoot had a cloaking device like the Predator, and that's why we can't ever find him.
I think that was a Mitch Hedberg joke about the Bigfoot being blurry, and that's why we can't take pictures of him.
They said that sometimes when they were in the woods, they would hear voices making fun of them, like 20 feet up in the air, that would be mocking what they said.
This dumbass meditating.
Pretty much. They said that once...
It was us. It was our podcast. We podcasted. It was a time warp.
Oh, that's funny. It says that they oftentimes would smell a strong musk odor. The pastures would unexplainably light up at night like a football stadium. They claim to have seen shafts of light emanating from the ground. They and others say that they heard what sounded like heavy machinery operating under the earth. And they heard voices. One night, Tom and his... I assume Tom here, that's the first time I see his name, must have been Mr. Gorman. Tom and his son and his nephew remember hearing loud, disembodied conversations, some unintelligible in different languages. The disembodied male voices spoke in what witnesses say were mocking tones, sounding like they were emanating from 20 or more feet above their heads, but they saw nothing. Dogs accompanying the 3 witnesses growled and barked at the voices, and then took off in panic. They noticed physical manifestations in the yard. While checking on his herd in the 3rd homestead, Gorman noticed one night that someone had dug up his pasture. Hundreds of pounds of soil had been scooped out of the ground. The edges of the holes resembled perfect circles being cut, almost like somebody had used a cookie cutter, and some cookie coater, decoder rings. They were masons. And it's like they used cookie cutters on the pasture, and several smaller scoop marks were also found in the yard. Blah, blah, blah. Gorman's report similar crop circles. That's kind of boring because I've heard about that 100 times. In the spring of 1995, the Gormans started seeing strange things in the sky. While checking on their cattle one day, the Gormans, along with their nephew, spotted what they thought was a rectangular vehicle parked in the property. They approached it, figuring the driver might have had mechanical problems. They got a little bit closer, and it looked more like an RV. But it started driving It started driving slowly away from them. As they moved closer, it got farther. They climbed a fence to get a better look at what they had saw, and discovered this was no Winnebago. The craft rose above the tree. It was a Wendigo. The craft rose above the treetops slowly and flew away, making no sound as it departed. It certainly wasn't a helicopter. The witnesses had a clear view and say the object was the shape of a refrigerator with a single light on in the front and a red light in the back. So at least it was street legal. By far the most common objects they witnessed were floating spheres of different sizes and colors. Between 1995 and 96, the Gormans and others in the area reported 12 separate incidents of seeing large orange circles flying over the trees in the center of the homestead. Tom Gorman claims that holes occasionally opened up and orange spheres or smaller spheres would fly out. A neighboring rancher told the reporter of his own encounters in what he called flying orange basketballs. By early 1996, the sightings of blue spheres at the ranch had become almost commonplace. The orbs were said to be about the size of a softball made of glass filled with bubbling blue liquids, so they were just crystal balls. Mr. and Miss Gorman say that in April 1996, they watched one of the orbs repeatedly circle the head of one of their horses. The horse was illuminated by an intense blue light, and there was a sound like static electricity in the air. But it wasn't ball lightning, they said. The orb seemed to be intelligently controlled. When the Gormans approached the horse with the flashlight, the orb darted off, maneuvering through the tree branches with high speed and dexterity. The Gormans say the blue spheres seemed to generate severe psychological effects in the family. Whenever they would appear, the family would feel severe waves of fear roll across them. One evening in 96, Mr. Gorman was outside with 3 of his dogs when he noticed a blue orb darting around the field near the ranch house. Gorman urged his dogs to go after the ball. Go get the ball! Go get the ball! Fuck you, old man! The dogs chased and snapped at the orb, but it dodged and maneuvered enough to stay just beyond their reach of the snapping jaws. The ball led the dogs out across the pasture into the thick brush and the borders of the field. Gorman said he heard the dogs make 3 terrible yelps, and then they were silent. He called for them. They never responded. The next morning, Gorman went out to look for the dogs, but what he found were 3 round spots of dried, brittle vegetation. Vegetation. That's right, folks. Vegetation and meditation. See, his friend was out in the yard meditating, eating carrots.
Vegetation.
What he found were 3 round spots of dried and brittle vegetation. In the middle of each circle was black, greasy lumps. Gorman summarized that his dogs must have been incinerated by something. One thing for sure, the dogs were never seen again. The disappearance of the dogs prompted the Gormans to think about getting out. I would have freaking got out by then, right? Would you guys have stuck around?
Fuck yeah, I would have. I want to know what happened to my dogs. There were 3 black lumps on there, and I said, well, that might have been Fido, but I'm not sure. So, you know what, honey? We need to sell this place and get out of here. Shit.
So, hey, speaking of
that's my fucking prize coon dog right there. Now he's a black spot on the yard.
That segues perfectly into the next paragraph. Mutilations and other animal mysteries. Contrary to your shitty interpretation, Tom Gorman wasn't some country bumpkin farmer trying to get by. He had several college degrees and advanced training in animal husbandry.
That's because he married animals. There we go.
Problem solved. I now pronounce you duck and duck. You may kiss your duck. And he was considered to be an expert in artificial insemination and had plans for raising hybrid high-end stock at his picturesque ranch. His herd, which ranged from 60 to 80 head of cattle, consisted of top-of-the-line heifers and four 2,000-pound show-class bulls. Holy shit, he had 4 one-ton bulls.
And that's what we call a lot of bullshit.
That's a whole lot of bullshit. From the day he moved his herd onto the ranch, though, his hopes and his
dreams were shattered because his prized dogs were black lumps in the ground. The end.
From the day he moved his herd onto the ranch, though, his hopes and his animals seemed to be under assault. The balls of light that were seen often on the property seemed to take a special interest in the cattle and were often seen buzzing around the heads of animals. Sometimes the cattle would react violently, the herd splitting suddenly as if some invisible force was plowing through their middle, kind of like the separation of the Red Sea. It then got worse. Although the Gormans kept a close watch on their stock, something began exacting a terrible toll. One cow was found dead in a field, a strange, crisp hole that had been cut through one of its eyes. Then there were no tracks of blood. The Gormans wondered what could have done such a thing. He noticed a strong musk odor around the carcass, a smell that would soon become all too well. Other cattle were carved up as if with pinking shears. Cattle mutilations have been reported throughout North America for several decades. Blah, blah, blah. In typical cases, the ears, eyes, udders, and sex organs are removed with surgical precision. Gorman's animals were subjected to all of the above. As an experienced hunter and rancher, Gorman was more familiar with the capabilities of natural predators. This wasn't being done by Guys, it wasn't being done by cantaloupes, I can tell you that much. This wasn't being done by coyotes.
Attack of the killer cantaloupes.
This wasn't being done by coyotes or mountain lions or cantaloupes or jackalopes. The butchery was simply too clean. No blood was ever found in the scene of the attacks, and his other animals also suffered. His favorite horse had its legs slashed as if by a sharp instrument or claws. The musk odor again was present when they discovered the damaged horse. His dog seemed to have developed paranoia. I guess he got more dogs. They stayed inside their doghouse for days at a time, too fearful to emerge for food. 6 of the family's cats vanished in one night. In all, soon cattle started disappearing. One of the animals vanished from the snow-covered field. Gorman saw the hoofprints lead into the field, but the tracks simply stopped, as did the cattle disappear, as if the animal had been plucked from the sky. A 1,200-pound cow leaves tracks in the snow, Gorman told himself. So what happened to this one? In all, 14 of Gorman's prized animals were either sliced up or vanished. In one instance, a cow found mutilated just 5 minutes after Gorman's son had checked on it. That's fucking weird. Something cut a hole 6 inches wide and 18 inches deep in the animal's rectum. It cored out its butt. That's what it says here. It cored out a section. Hamburger stuff with its butt. It was hamburger stuff with its butt. The cored out section extended into the cow's body cavity, yet there was no blood on the cow or in the snow covering the ground. The loss of 14 expensive animals from an 80-head herd is an extreme loss by any standards. There were other losses as well, but from unexplainable causes. It meant that Gorman was close to financial collapse. One April afternoon, Gorman and his wife took a quick drive to town for supplies. As they passed the corral that contained 4 of their bulls, they commented to each other that they would really be in trouble if something were to happen to one of the bulls. Famous last words. When they returned to the ranch less than half an hour later, all 4 of the bulls were gone. The Gormans began a frantic search for the missing behemoths and couldn't find a trace. As a last resort, Gorman decided to peek into his metal trailer that's situated inside the corral. He thought it highly unlikely the bulls would be inside, but from the corral there's only one door in and one door out. The trailer was the only other place they could be. The thick, heavy metal wire on the trailer was clearly intact. Gorman was shocked that all 4 of his bulls were inside the trailer, squeezed in like many oversized sardines into a tiny enclosure, crammed in against all sides of the trailer and against each other. When he yelled at his wife at what he had found, the bulls seemingly...
Charlene, look at these bulls are missing, God.
When he yelled at his wife that he had found them, the bulls seemingly woke up as if from a dream and started kicking the hell out of the trailer and each other. There's no way anyone could coax these 4 bulls into that trailer, says Calm Keller, a microbiologist who had come to know the Gormans well. It would be very tough to set any of them in one...
What's a fucking microbiologist know about cows?
Did you say?
Maybe he is.
Did you say Calm Killer was his name?
No, I'm not going to repeat myself because you're not paying attention, Preston.
That's what it sounded like. It sounded like Calm Killer.
Calm Killer. It would be tough enough to get one of them in the trailer, let alone all four. Virtually impossible. The only door leading from the corral into the trailer was very securely fastened with wire. And there were cobwebs on the inside of the door, proving that it had not been opened in a long time. It's almost as if somebody overheard the ranchers' worries about the bulls and then decided to mess with them. Oh shit, guys, put them in the trailer. Go. Go, 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 go. So lots of weird shit has happened to this family, unfortunately.
That almost sounds like a trickster spirit or something like that.
Yeah, pretty much. So we've got the family being plagued by ball light, flying basketballs,
Dead dogs.
dead dogs, hamburger stuff with their bulls' butts, Bigfoot sightings, skinwalkers, werewolves, and everything else. So at that point, they're wanting to sell the damn ranch and get the hell out of Dodge. So if we would then fast forward a little bit, let me find the exact date. The middle of 96, Gorman's ready to cash in their... Okay. Okay. By the middle of 1996, the Gormans were ready to cash in their chips. Those who know Tom Gorman say he blamed himself for the weird string of events that had ruined his ranching operation. He didn't want to give up, but he felt cursed, and he was ready to bail out for the sake of his family. In an uncharacteristic moment, he told parts of the story to a newspaper reporter. A respected journalist from Salt Lake City heard about it, came to the ranch, and talked to the family. Pictures were taken, and a wire service picked up the story. That's how Bob Bigelow first learned about the ranch. Now, I will give you the abridged version of Robert Bigelow. For people who don't know who Robert Bigelow is, he's the guy associated with SpaceX, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Fantastic. If you don't know about SpaceX, then you probably live under a rock, but I will tell you more about it in just a minute. So, Bigelow grew up in Las Vegas.
Hello?
He attended elementary school, blah, blah, blah. He became a real estate tycoon.
Can you guys hear me?
I think in the early 2000s. And the guy had a dream ever since he was little about space travel. So really, he's kind of intelligent about this. It says from the late 60s throughout the 1990s, he spent time developing commercial real estate, hotels, most famously the Budget Suites of America. And he went on then to form Bigelow Aerospace. So it says here in his real estate career, Robert built approximately 15,000 units and purchased another 8,000 until the big crash of the stock in 2008. Robert Bigelow basically just wanted to make a bunch of money the easiest way he could, so then he could jump into the space race. So he's indicated that he has plans to spend up to $500 million to develop the first commercial space station. That's about the same amount that NASA has extended on one single space shuttle mission. Bigelow Aerospace has launched about 2 experimental space modules, Genesis 1, Genesis 2, and has plans for a full-scale manned space habitat to be sent into orbit. He's going to call them orbital hotels. Research labs and factories. Bigelow's Beam module was launched into the International Space Station on April 8th of 2016. And that's where things kind of get boring. So anyway, enter Robert Bigelow. Robert Bigelow has bought the... No, not at all. He bought the ranch. He bought this ranch after hearing about all the weird shit. And here's what's interesting. Bob Bigelow, as he's known, was kind of a shadowy guy who may or may not have CIA connections. And he was out to corner the market on ETs. So the guy is basically in a huge space race wanting to be basically on par with NASA. He hears about this ranch that's being... plagued by UFOs and aliens and ETs and stuff like that. So he decides, what the hell, might as well buy it. It's kind of like my own private Area 51. So they set up shop there. The NIDS comes in, and they're basically like an investigation team. If you give me a second, no, I won't, because I can't find it. I'm not going to waste any time. So anyway, Bigelow and company set up shop. Bigelow and his team flew to Utah, introduced themselves to the Gormans, and said, hey guys, I got this team of NIDS investigators, and I want to buy your fucking ranch. They were a bit skeptical of this guy, but long story short, Bigelow now has the ranch. So I'm not going to bother you about all this other crap here. But basically it says, by that point the family was a wreck. UFOs, balls of light, cattle mutilations, animal disappearances, Bigfoot, skinwalkers, UFOs, ball light, everything else. They packed up all their shit and they kicked rocks.
Kick rocks, bitches.
Yay.
There you go. So that's pretty much what happened. Bigelow stepped in, set up an investigation team, and he hired a bunch of like security and stuff like that. And now, Preston, you should take over because my tongue is a wagon.
Okay, so the story that I'm going to tell is of a security guard that worked the ranch. Now, in the story that I heard, they used the false name because they didn't want to give away his identity. I don't remember what that name was. So, what name do you want me to use? Like Fred, Bob, Jim, Joe?
How about the security guard?
But he's got a name like Carl. We're going to use Carl. Coral.
Don't no, because that's too fucking annoying. Don't use Carl because you're gonna say Coral a bunch.
Fred.
Call him Tom.
Tom?
Tom sounds good.
Tom.
Yeah, you can't possibly fuck that up.
So, shortly after Bigelow bought the ranch, we're going to talk about Tom's life for a minute. So Tom's life was going to shit, and he was going through a really rough divorce, and he decided to go down to Mexico to like a Cozumel or like one of the the party happening spots to kind of get rid of his woes or whatever. And Tom was ex-military. He was in the Marines, and he came across a Marine buddy while he was down there, who just so happened to work for the Bigelow Industries and was on Skinwalker Ranch. And they got to shooting the shit, and Tom was like, yeah, man, I need a job right now. And so, before you know it, he's like, listen, I got the perfect gig. I babysit this ranch for like 6 months out of the year. Why don't you come down here? Why don't you babysit this ranch with me? Get your shit together. Life will be good. So Tom's like, man, this sounds like a fucking dream come true. So he flies down to Las Vegas, where the Bigelow headquarters is, and they have the interview. They hire the guy. They're like, yeah. And so Tom is he's got 2 weeks leave before he has to report to the ranch. So he decides he's going to go see Mom and Pop. And as he's driving back home, he reports that he gets this urge, like he sees this bar on the side of the road, and he's just like, I don't know, I just need a beer right now. So he pulls over to this, biker bar, which is something he would never really go to, but he just had this urge to pull over. So he's in the bar and gets a beer, and he's sitting there up at the bar stool drinking a beer and shooting the shit with the barkeep, and in walks this guy. Now everybody in the bar just kind of stops what they're doing, then they turn around, and Tom says that in walked a fucking Indian. Not like a classic nowadays Native American. We're talking like Arapaho Joe, Apache, like he's got like the war, like the headgear shit on. Like this guy looks totally out of place. And he smelled like a wet dog, like really disgusting.
Dun, 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 dun.
Dun. Really musty. And he reports that later on while talking to Indian Joe, that's what we're going to call him. Or do you want to call him Arapaho Joe?
Yeah, let's not be racist. Let's just call him Tim.
But I'm
or Joe. Let's call him Joe. Split the difference. Call him Joe.
But I'm Native American, so it's not quite racist.
Yeah, but the rest of us aren't racist bastards, so maybe just call him Joe.
All right, so he said he noticed that when he was talking to Joe that his eyes, like the very back part of the eyes, instead of being white, were this really nasty yellow, and then it was like this kind of gray color past that, and they just look really old, really sunken, and just, I don't know, this guy got this really creepy vibe about Joe. And so he comes up to the bar, and he sits down next to Tom, and he's just like, I got a proposition for you. And Tom's like, what? He's like, I came across this canyon, and I found this treasure of gold, and being that I'm so old, I can't all dig it up by myself, and I'm gonna need some help. And he pulls from his pocket this Spanish coin, like that was minted in like 1797, or like it's really really old, and just kind of lays it and throws it on the bar. He's like, this is for you. I want you to have this, and you listen to the rest of my story here. And so he starts to tell him about how he found this cave and found the treasure, and wants old Tom to help him. And Tom's just like kind of a couple beers in, and he's like, I gotta piss. He's like, I don't know. And so he gets up, and he's just kind of like taking a piss, and he gets back, and he looks up at the barkeep. He's like, hey, where'd Joe go? And He's like, he said that he knows where you'll be. He'll find you again, and to think about his proposition. And he said he wanted you to keep this gold coin. And Tom's like, just, you know what, you keep it. And it's like, get the fuck out of there. Now, when Joe walked in and was telling his story about finding the treasure, he had ordered a whiskey drink. And the drink...
Or a vodka drink.
Huh?
A lager drink or a cider drink. Did he sing the songs about the good times?
Yes.
Did he sing the songs about the best times?
The best of times. But the whiskey drink that he ordered, it took the barkeep a while to figure out like what the fuck this guy was talking about, because nobody calls that anymore. And he also paid with a really old like Spanish note that was probably worth more than the $5 whiskey. So everything about Indian Joe here is completely just out of place, okay? Now, Tom reports to the ranch a couple weeks later, and the first couple nights he starts experiencing sleep paralysis. He's having really bad dreams. He wakes up, he can't move, he sees a shadow in the corner. He's freaking the fuck out. And anybody who works for the ranch is instructed that if you have any odd occurrences, you see anything weird, you're supposed to record it, write it down, and then turn it in at the end of your shift, so to speak, so at the end of your 6 months, so that they can compile this data. So one of the other guys that works in security there decides that they're going to videotape him while he sleeps. And sure as shit, one night, as Tom's having a nightmare and he's like sleep paralysis, they capture this shadow floating across the bed, and then as soon as Tom snaps out of it, the shadow disappears out the window and just kind of like, goes through the glass and like almost like a fog or a mist, and it's just gone. And so the security team, after reviewing this footage, they start walking around the perimeter of the house, the complex, and it was snowing around this time. So they found these footprints that look like sideways bowling pins. So they're like, get the really skinny part in the back, and then they get wider toward the front. And these pins, bowling pin tracks, were right outside of Tom's window, and they started to follow the tracks. Now, since this is like a 480-acre complex, there's these little tiny ranch houses spread throughout the ranch. So when they're moving the cattle from here to there, the ranchers can sleep in the middle of the night, and they have like these little shacks, so to speak, to sleep at. So they follow the tracks all the way to this dilapidated shack, and the tracks go right up to the door, and they start to hear this noise in the woods. So the other two security guards that went with Tom were like, okay, look, just stay here. Don't go inside yet. We need to go see what that is. And, Tom's like ex-Marine, like, I got this. He walks in, and as soon as he walks in, like this darkness surrounds this fireplace. And all of a sudden, it's like this portal opens, and if you imagine a werewolf had sex with a zombie, like this very decrepit, skinny, nasty-looking, gangly beast, two of them. Have you ever seen Scorpion King?
Years ago.
You remember that fucking like Anubis creature thing, the army of Anubis, those like weird wolf-looking, gangly, half-dead things? That's what That's what I picture in my mind. So picture that, okay? So these fucking things are coming out of this black wall. They're all gangly and nasty. So fucking Marine Tom pulls out his Beretta. He's like, bah, 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 bah. He's like firing like shots, just a fucking clip into these guys, and nothing. The bolts are just like bouncing off, and they're like snarling at him. So he just kind of like, oh shit, I should probably run. So he takes off and runs out the door. And as he's running out the door and into the snow, he trips over a rock and hits his head. Bam. Knocked out. Now, this is where I would like to tell you that the gangly, zombie werewolves ate him. But no, he woke up what seemed like some time later, and he was in a dark, dank cave. And he was kind of feeling around, and he could feel that if he kind of stood up, the cave was just a little bit above his head. And so he started moving, started walking forward, and it just seemed like he was walking for hours, and it didn't seem like he was getting anywhere. And it got to the point to where the only way that he could tell that he was moving at all was if he put his hands on the side of the cave wall, because then he could feel his hands brush against the rocks as he was walking. And what seemed like hours, he finally saw a little bit of light at the edge of the cave. And so he makes his way to it, and when he finally gets out of it, the landscape that he saw was like a desert canyon mixed with Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night. So as he's looking up into the sky, there's like all these weird like swirling clouds and stars and weird bullshit. And he notices off in the distance in one of the other canyons or mesas, there was like a fire and some music and some dancing or whatever. And so he makes his way toward that, and he's getting closer, and the music's getting louder. And then before you know it, he comes up onto two teeny tiny little dwarves around a mummified body, and they were like, ay, 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 doing a little like Indian dance, ay, ay, ay. And he's just like, what the fuck? And he makes his way up, and he's just watching these two little gnomes, do their thing. And all of a sudden, the mummy just sits straight up, and it reaches out toward him and opens its mouth and is like, "Argh!" And then at this point, the gnomes are like, oh shit, they're freaking out, they're hooting, hollering, and this black mist starts to pour out of the mummy's mouth. And the next thing one of the gnomes just like hits him in the head. He's knocked back out again, and when he wakes back up, he's in a hospital in Las Vegas that Bigelow Space Industries put him in. And they had said that he had been missing for like 2.5 weeks, but his body only showed signs of hypothermia of what somebody who's suffering from the elements for like 2 or 3 days. And they made him, basically they kept him in the hospital long enough for the Bigelow scientists to come back in and take his story down, get all the details. And he decided to visit one of the shamans, the Navajo shamans in the area, and tell him about this experience. And the shaman had told him that the Skinwalkers are actually Native American shamans from the different tribes who practice the dark arts, and that Indian Joe that walked into that bar gave him that coin because if he would have taken that coin, it would have gave him power over Tom, and he would have been able to, steal or suck his soul. And these shamans, they practiced the dark arts for so long that when they died or whatever, or transgressed over to the other dimension, they turned into these gangly wolf-like creatures, and when they come back through to our side, that's the shift, or that's the form that they have to take. And had Tom taken that coin, then that Skinwalker would have been able to use and feed off of his soul, and that the shadow creature that was plaguing him while he was sleeping, and the one of the gangly werewolves that he encountered to begin with, and then that black mist coming out of the mummy, was all attempts of the same Skinwalker trying to get a hold of him.
Well, I'll be damned.
And then he was like a lot like Mr. Gorman. After all that, he's like, you know what, guys? Fuck it. I'm out. And he kicked rocks. Never went back.
So I think what we ought to do is maybe buy a couple of these books and read some more facts and some more stories. Because I feel like there's probably juicier stories than you could dig up online. But you probably got to buy some books. So.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Unfortunately. Yeah, maybe, baby. All right, guys. So with that, that's a good stopping point for this episode. We covered quite a bit. We're just a little over an hour now. So I think with all of that, we should just drop some plugs. So Preston, why don't you go ahead and start? You're chomping at the bits.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, because our buddy Steven got us a faithful listener, and let's give him a shout out because he's got his own podcast. Oh, indeed.
With how many H's?
I don't even fucking know. I lost count. There's so many.
4 H's. You jerk.
4. But you know
4
what?
H's.
I've listened to the podcast several times. Pretty good show. Check it out. Give Big Steven a chance. Amazing show. Good friend of ours. Listen to it. And listen, rate and review us. If you listen to this show, fucking go on iTunes and leave us a nice review, because that's what keeps pushing us up. So when people sign on to the podcast thing, it's like, look, there's this new podcast, Pixelated Paranormal, and that's how we reach out to other viewers just like you.
Right, Rob, what do you got to plug, my friend?
I want to plug Pixelated Sausage Cast with Mark. That's his podcast where he does what he does that I don't listen to, because it's him talking about rambling and rambling and other stuff, and sometimes he sings.
But he does it well.
And I ain't got time for that. No. Also, Pixelated Radio. That is the video game podcast where you'll probably hear me talk more about the PlayStation VR than I did here, and with Corey and Rich and Mark as well. Rich also has a podcast, Sports Car Unleashed, where he talks about sports cars and he unleashes them. I mean, I don't know if he unleashes them, but that's what he does. He talks about sports cars. And finally, we play D&D every other Wednesday on Twitch, 10 o'clock, 10:30, depends whenever the time fucking Sean decides he should show up. So
yeah. So then I guess that leads us to me, guys. I know everybody's dying to know, hey, I wonder what Sean's watching these days on the old television.
Nah, not really.
If anybody's a fan of creepypasta on Reddit, there's a new show on Sci-Fi.
Oh, yeah.
It's called Channel Zero, and I assume this season's called Candle Cove, but it's called Channel Zero Candle Cove, and I'm going to be the first to admit, it's on Sci-Fi, which had me really nervous. This show's pretty freaking great. It's
The problem is, I think they added way too much to the background of the real incident. Well, not when I say real incident, I mean it's the creepypasta. Basically, the only thing was about it was the kids, like the dinner table scene where they're talking about the show, and that's all that there was about it. And then somebody brings up, "Oh, well, my mom said I was just watching static." So that was basically the first episode of the show. However, the show seems to be about murders that took place in this area, and that was like they added so much to it so they could drag out an entire season.
Well, I think they've added several different creepypasta stories to make one cohesive story. But do you want to hear something funny? Basically, like Rob was saying, it's based on a creepypasta story about this kids' TV show of like this puppet show of these pirates, and they're on their way to this place called Candle Cove. The creepypasta story is written pretty well. It's pretty fun. But so I forgot all about that creepypasta story, right? So we're watching this show, and it shows a scene where this guy walks in, and they're sitting at the dinner table, and they're like in their 30s, late 30s, 40s, and they start reminiscing about this creepy cartoon they watched, like this puppet show, and how it was just on static. And I'm like, wait, what? I've seen that show before. And then they go, the guy goes in the room and sees a little 5-year-old girl, and he's like, "Hey, what are you watching?" And it shows the TV, and it's this weird, like, crappy puppet show with like static cutting in and out. And I'm kidding you not, I get the hot sweats and the chills, and my mouth's agape, and I'm like, no, I've seen this show too. Holy shit, this is real. And then it dawns on me like maybe half an hour later that I just remember reading the creepypasta story. But it had been a couple years ago, so like my memory, is one of those false memories. I had a pretty good laugh because I was just shitting bricks for a minute.
Or did you have a false memory? Maybe you had a real memory, but your mind is so fucking traumatized by it that you can't remember.
Are we even podcasting right now? So yeah, that's a good show. Channel Zero, Candle Cove on Sci-Fi. And then for anybody who wants to read a really good, gory horror book, check out this new book called The Troop, and it's by Nick Cutter. And I'm only on chapter 8, but so far there's a creepy gangly man who has an insatiable hunger that cannot be filled. There's 5 Cub Scouts that are probably about in 6th grade with one den leader named Tim. He's a doctor and a Cub Scout leader. They're on a camping trip by themselves on an island. The creepy zombie man is on a motorboat heading to the island coincidentally, and I'm sure that chaos is going to ensue. So check that shit out. Yep, that's it. So guys, thanks so much for listening. Don't forget, on Halloween, we'll have a special Halloween show from Presto and I. And other than that, thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you on the flippity flop.
Adios, everybody.
The cast at Pixelated Paranormal would like to thank you for listening to this week's episode. Pixelated Paranormal is here to tell you tales of the fantastical, the strange, the unknown. Tales that will move you a little further down the paranormal highway. If you'd like to share your own listener story, we would love to hear it. You have 2 ways. 1, email us at pixelatedparanormal@gmail.com. Again, that's pixelatedparanormal@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, we have that set up too. Dial us at 707-523-4263. Again, that's 707-523-4263. We'd really love to hear from you. Again, thanks for listening to this week's episode of Pixelated Paranormal, your guide to the unusual and the strange.
Nope, that's dumb.
Derpa derpa.
Like, yep, gip a derp derp.
Oh god, that refrigerator's flying away.
Chicka chicka. Chicka chicka.
Bow, bow.
That's kind of boring too.
Calm down, calm down.